TopMedTalk.
Monty Mythen here. As we prepare to move into the next phase of the COVID crisis, we're going to be widening our focus here on TopMedTalk. We will continue to deliver COVID-specific programs, but we all have a huge additional responsibility as we try to reboot normal services. So although this piece is not directly related to COVID-19, we believe it's information that is crucial to the bigger task of rebuilding the healthcare system as we learn to adapt and live with this new virus. Thank you to our sponsors and to you, our listeners, for helping us to share this important information.
Well, hello, I'm Desiree Chappell, and this is TopMedTalk from the European Anesthesiology Congress, Euroanesthesia 2019 here in Vienna, Austria, and I'm joined by Editor-in-Chief of TopMedTalk, Monty Mythen.
Good to be here, Desiree. Good to be here.
We would like to thank our sponsor, Edwards Life Sciences, for the booth that we have here in the trade exhibition, and they've been generous, very generous.
Very generous, giving us this piece of turf completely to ourselves to enable our free open access medical education ambition to be delivered.
That's right, that's right. So our next guest has been a speaker here at the meeting, and it's Alexandre Joosten. Alexander, how are you?
I'm good, thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you. So can you give us a little bit about your background? Where are you from? Where do you practice?
So originally I'm from Brussels in Belgium, from Erasme Hospital. So I graduated from medical school in 2008, and then from anesthesiology 2013. Then I spent 6 months in my hospital as an assistant professor, then moved to California Irvine for 1 year to work on automated system and goal-directed therapy technology and non-invasive monitoring. Then I went back to my hospital in Brussels for 3 years and a half, and now I am in Paris in Bicêtre Hospital. And my chairman is Jacques Duranteau, who is an expert in trauma management, microcirculation, and acute kidney injury.
Oh, interesting.
So going to Irvine in California, was Maxime Cannison there at the time? Is that why you went to that? He's now gone to LA, I believe.
Yeah, I decided to join him because in my institution at Erasme, we already did a lot of automated system for propofol and remifentanil administration. And at that time, I had to do my final work for my anesthesiology residency. And I did it on fluid and colloid in cardiac surgery. And we apply a goal-directed therapy strategy to compare two colloid solutions. And therefore, read a lot of papers. And then I discovered that he has just developed an automated system for fluid administration. So in my mind, it was a nice thing to try to combine multiple automated systems together. That's why I decided to join his team for a year, just to learn about an automated system for fluid administration to apply goal-directed therapy in the operating room.
Can I expand on that a little bit? Because I've read the papers and I've seen some of this a bit more up close.
Yeah.
If you take whatever system you're using to deliver the fluid, let's call it a volumetric system, so a pump system, that we would usually use and say, if we were doing it manually, we would say, please give 200 mils, for example. And we're guiding that by monitoring of some form. You've linked the two together in a closed loop, have you, to say the human just have to verify that the decision is right, or the human still gives the fluids?
Yeah, so it's an automated system. So we decided to work with the EV1000 monitor at that time. So we link the monitor, the patient is linked to the monitor, and then via cables we linked the monitor to a computer, and then a computer to an infusion pump. Then in the closed-loop interface, you have to choose the strategy that you want to apply for the patient. And the system is going to deliver fluid boluses based on this strategy. And we have different strategy. The classical one was to deliver a fluid bolus if the system believes that the patient is going to increase his stroke volume greater than 15% after the fluid bolus. So it's a prediction of how much the patient will increase his stroke volume after the infusion of the fluid bolus. Then you can be a little more liberal or restrictive, so you can choose the strategy. Of course, if the system is delivering a fluid bolus but you are not agree, you can stop it manually. And if you want to deliver a fluid bolus manually, if, for example, there is no fluid administration at that time, you can still do it. So it's fully automated, but you can still interact with the system and even override the system or change the strategy. The problem is that it's very good for long surgery and when the patient is not bleeding. Because, of course, when the patient is bleeding, we are limited by the infusion rate of any pumps. Mm-hmm. And for the moment, we don't have any pump that can deliver a fluid bolus faster than 1 liter per hour. It means 100 fluid challenge, for example, in 6 minutes. So, of course, when the patient has an acute bleeding, it's too slow. We have to give more fluid in an additional EEV line, for example.
Additional way. All right. Well, so what are you working on now that you're in France at Bichat?
So maybe you have heard, but the algorithm of the system has been implemented in the monitor as an open loop or as a clinical decision support system. It means that it's the same algorithm, but instead of giving the fluid automatically, the system is just going to remind the clinician when to give a bolus, and then the clinician can give it manually, choose the amount, choose the speed, and choose the type of fluid. In my institution, my goal...
For a second, just make sure I've got that clear. So the monitor gives a message, comes up to say, I think you should give fluid. Yeah. But it's still the clinician then agrees or disagrees.
Yeah, of course.
And has to give the fluid.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a step towards...
Yeah. It's a step between the simple monitor and the fully automated system.
And this is all that you're working on. This isn't anything
that's out. I think that's out there now, isn't it? Is that?
For the moment, we have the CE mark for this.
Okay.
And the goal is to have the FDA soon, I hope.
So it's approved in Europe as a form of decision support
system for fluid administration.
Oh, okay.
What we've shown...
is it Is it here? Can we look at it here?
I think.
Yeah.
I think you can have a look. Oh. Yeah. What we have shown is that when you use a decision support that is going to remind the clinician when to give a bolus or not, when compared to a manually driven protocol that we apply all over the world, you can spend more time during surgery with a SVV below 13 or 12%, so in a preload independent state compared to a manually applied protocol. And today I'm going to test the hypothesis that if the system recommends better when to give a bolus of fluid, and if you spend more time during surgery in a preload independent state, probably you may have less microcirculatory problems. Because he has just shown in a recent paper in anesthesiology that when you are in a preload dependent state, you have alteration of microcirculation measured in the tongue. So therefore, I think it's nice to test this hypothesis in a randomized controlled trial, because I think it will be hard to show an improvement in outcome between this decision support system and a manually driven protocol. Or you will need a lot of patients, because finally it's two goal-directed strategy. The only difference will be that one system is going to remind the clinician, the other one you just have to do it, but we don't know if you are going to apply it.
Yeah. Monty, what do you have thoughts on that? Because I know we talk a lot about
I think it makes complete sense to me, complete physiological sense, because if you are, by definition, if you are in a preload-dependent state, now we're in a preload-dependent state at the moment because we're an exercising human, but if you're lying flat on your back, if you are preload-dependent, you are by definition centrally hypovolemic. Once you're centrally hypovolemic, you must be stressing the microcirculation, because that's where you're stealing the fluid from to keep your heart-lung-brain system alive. So it's basic physiology in practice, and it's very appealing that some degree of automation to help us, because we would appear to be collectively as practitioners very bad at this.
Yeah.
That's a recurring theme.
Yeah.
It seems sensible to let the machines help.
Yeah. Also because we never measure microcirculation.
Yeah.
So in fact, when we discharge a patient from the ICU or from the PACU, when I sign and say, okay, the patient can go to the ward, we just have the mean arterial pressure or something like this. We say, okay, heart rate is good, no norepinephrine running, mean arterial pressure is good, but maybe the patient has still some microcirculatory problems. And I think that the link between a preload independent state and microcirculatory variable can be nice to investigate. So that's one of my ongoing trials today, and I will test this in a little less than 80 patients, two groups of 39 patients, to show that if we have this system, we can spend more time in a preload independent state and probably have less microcirculatory.
That's a longer discussion for another day, but do you lie your patients flat before you make that determination? Because that's one of the ongoing discussions, is if you're...
yes,
if
because he will be in the operating room.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you're sitting up, that you are preload dependent if you're healthy physiologically, because you are exercising and therefore stressed to a certain extent. That's why one of the reasons you have to have restorative sleep is to put yourself into a non-stress state for a period of time.
Oh, we do need to have more conversations.
It's a much longer conversation. It's good, cool, complex human physiology that is often misinterpreted and misreported.
Right.
Or I don't know what
really
I'm talking about, which is another real possibility.
I don't think that's
But that would be, if you're sending the paper in, one of the questions would be, did you lie them flat?
Yeah. Oh, that's a very good point.
But they're on the operating table, so they'll be flat.
Yeah. Well, Alexandre, we have just a couple more minutes. What are some of the other initiatives that you're working on?
I'm also working on an automated system for vasopressor administration. And so we did some computer studies and then in vivo animal studies. And now we did a small pilot study that will be soon published in the British Journal, showing that when you use this system, you spend around 2.5 to 3% of the treatment time during the surgery in hypertension. And this is a real improvement because we did not compare in the study, but we know that in our standard practice, we analyze all the patients during the last 3 years that were on continuous norepinephrine administration or noradrenaline administration. It means that we needed these drugs to increase mean arterial pressure, and we showed that patients spend around 50% of the case time with a mean arterial pressure between 60 and 80, which should be the standard of care. Still 10%, in fact 11% with a mean arterial pressure below 60. That's probably not enough. And more than 40% with a mean arterial pressure above 80. I believe this is not very critical because we did not analyze if the patient really needs a higher mean arterial pressure, and sometimes we need to target 100 or 120. But still, we spend now 2.5 to 3% compared to the standard practice. It was around 10%, let's say. So it's a real improvement. And when you see all the recent papers published almost each month in anesthesiology or high impact factor journals showing the link between hypertension and adverse cardiovascular, renal, and neurologic complication, that's probably a good way to minimize hypertension during surgery and also in the ICU.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Yeah. When do you think that's going to be coming out?
In the market, I think it will be difficult because it's a dangerous drug. And also because the computer can crash sometime. It happened. So when you have the system for the fluid, when the bag is empty, then the clinician has to change the bag. So you cannot give more than 500 or 1 liter at each time. When you have the syringe with the vasopressor, you have to stay near the patient for the moment. And we are trying to improve the safety of this kind of stuff. We had to override in 20 patients, 6 or 7 patients. It means that it's quite a big number. It's 30% of the time. So we need to work a little more on this. So we did a small pilot study, and now, of course, the next step for us is to do head-to-head comparison between manually adjusted infusion and automated infusion of noradrenaline. And that's what I'm going to do in the ICU in head trauma injury patient, because we know that we have to keep the mean arterial pressure in a very narrow range because we measure also intracranial pressure, and we cannot have too low or too high intracranial pressure, and also in the operating room. So we have 2 small 2020 randomized controlled trials, both in the ICU and in the operating room.
Well, fantastic. Well, we're going to keep an eye out for all those studies that are going to be coming out. And did you say you're going to have one that's published soon?
One will be published soon, but it's a proof of concept. It's just 20 patients without control group, just to show if it was feasible. So I tested it in 4 different types of surgery, like in neuroembolism, aneurysm embolization, vascular, major abdominal, and cardiac surgery, because these are patients when we know that we'll have to prepare noradrenaline. And it was quite good, but of course I stayed with the system during all the time.
And that's in press in the British Journal of Anesthesia?
It's in press. It will be available, I would say, in the next 2 or 3 weeks, so pretty soon.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we'll try the BJA, keep a link for that. Perfect.
But you will be, you can download it in PubMed.
Well, Alexandre, thank you so much for sitting down with us. It's been a great conversation. Hopefully we'll be able to catch up with you soon. All right?
You.
Thanks
With
so
pleasure.
much.
TopMedTalk.
Nick Majerison here. Have you got yourself onto edpom.org yet? If not, you might not be aware, EdPom Chicago. Tickets are free for a limited period only. Go now to edpom.org. Evidence-based perioperative medicine. edpom.org.